I started this quilt in March of 2020, and it's now July of 2021. It has taken me a while, but in that time, I've done many other things, and I have, for the quilt, I did 81 blocks. I sashed all of them. I made a border for the entire quilt. I did this in 4 sections. The quilt's in 4 sections. I quilted each of the sections, as you can see. They're quilted. And now I'm ready to put the sections together. I've put the first 2 sections together already, and this is the next 2. And I need to show you how to do that. First of all, we need to prep the section. I can't just sew this together. I want to sew it just to the sashing here. And not a problem. But I need to prep these. This is too much stuff here. I need to get rid of some of the excess batting on both sections. Let me show you how I do that. On the section that does not have the sashing, because I'm going to sew about right here all the way down, I need to decrease the amount of batting. I don't want to overlap this batting too much, or I'll have a bump. I want this seam to disappear. So what I'm going to do is, very carefully, I'm going to tear, not cut. If I cut it, it will have a line. It will show a line. And I'm just going to pull this apart like this, leaving myself just a little bit of overlap here. Just a little bit. You can see it, just a little bit of an overlap. You'll see how that works out a little bit later. So I'm going to continue to pull this one down, and I'll be back. I'm back. I have removed that excess batting all the way down, and now I need to remove the excess here. I did not stitch it across here, so it's going to be a little hard for me to see, but I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to pull our batting out of the way, because I don't want to cut it. And we're just going to trim, so I have about a ½ inch there. Now, my sashing is a full inch, so I don't need all of this extra fabric in my seam. So I'm just going to trim it carefully, someplace between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. Try not to cut that batting. And there we go. I'm going to do that all the way down. I'll start at the other end here. Coming up and just catching that underneath, just so I don't cut the batting, because that batting will mesh with the other side very neatly, and it will stay in place once I have quilted it, and you will not be able to find that seam unless you know where it's at. I'll finish this, and I'll show you how we handle the other side. I have the other section, the section with the sashing. Now, when we put these sections together, I'm going to sew the sashing, only the sashing, to the other section. And then I'm going to carefully work the back seam with the batting and the backing by hand, so that I have an invisible seam on that. And then I will top stitch my quilting here. Let me show you how we do this one. On this one, it's basically the same. The only difference is that we're going to pull it back. Now remember, we left about that much batting from the other one. We want to leave just a little shy of the edge of the sashing here, because we want this to overlap but not be a lot of excess. And we'll just do it the same way we did the other one. making sure that there's no overlap here, because we'll have to hide that in our seam, and we don't want any excess in the seam. There we go. I'm going to work on this, and I'll be back. I'm back. I pulled the batting off, and now I'm ready to trim the backing. As you can see, I came a little close here. I've got enough there to finish it, but I'm not going to trim that anymore. So I'm going to trim just beyond where the sashing is, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch. I would like to have a good amount of fabric to turn under, because I will be stitching this by hand. So I'm just going to trim this off, and then I'll show you how we pin this. And I'll be back. Okay. I have my 2 sections, the one without the sashing and the one with the sashing, ready to pin together. What we want to do is we want to line up the sashing lines. See here? Right here, we want to line those up. And we want to pin that sashing carefully here, like that. And then just line it up. Now, I would probably pin it all as I went, and I would pin it. I wouldn't try to do this without pinning. Now, see, I've got a little excess there, so I need to pin it correctly so that I don't grow, so my quilt doesn't grow at the edge. And as I go down, I need to check and match up each of the sashing sections. Here's another sashing. It needs to match up exactly. And remember, I'm only pinning the sashing, not all of the batting and everything from the other side. Now, on the one without the sashing, I'm pinning all of that, batting and everything. But on the one with the sashing, I'm only pinning the sashing. Let me finish pinning this, and I will sew it, and I'll show you what it looks like. I have finished the seam and pulling the last pin out. As you can see, when I open it up, it basically is seamless on this side, not on the other side though. So let me show you what we need to do. We need to flip it. And there's a lot of quilt here because this is the top section, and it's approximately 7 feet across. All right, so this is what it looks like on the back. All right, now what we need to do is we need to mesh the battings together, and we're going to do that by simply laying the batting down from the side that had the sash on it, lay it onto the sash, lay it down, and just do that for a little ways. Okay, that looks good. Then we're going to pull our excess backing all over, fold it up, and pin it. Now, when we hand stitch that, that seam's going to disappear. We just need to work it the whole length. Remember, open it up, lay the batting from the sash side over, pull the other side down, lay it down, get everything laid down, give it a good stretch, goes. Now, when I stitch this, I'm going to allow this seam line that shows on the other side to be visible. That way, it will look just like the rest of the quilt. No hidden seam lines, anything else like that. All the way down. Now, I need to, it take me a while to pin this, and even longer to hand stitch it. There we go. All the way down. Remember, the batting from the sashing side goes down, and if you've got a little excess, you can pull it off. Lay it down. And if you got a stitch that came too far and doesn't let you lay it down neatly, just release the stitch like there. On this one, on the binding, I don't want that seam line to show that I stitched the two pieces together with, so I'll just hide it. There we go. Last piece, here we are, all the way down. And this was the piece that was a little bit short. Let's see if we got enough here. Just barely enough. But remember, I'm hand sewing this, so I can catch that without any difficulty. Now, I will finish pinning, and I will stitch all of this together, and then I'll take my two sections, and I will sew those together in the same way that I sewed these two sections together, and then I will be back for the sashing. There's one small thing I want to mention, though. When you're sewing the other two sections together, here's my finished seam from the other two sections, and I've already quilted it on the front side, and you can't even see that seam unless you know exactly where it's at. But on the other side from that seam, you need to make sure you keep the sashing separate. You don't want to work that into this seam. What I did here is I just sewed the two sashing pieces together, and then I sewed the rest of the seam together. Don't forget to do that, or you'll find that it's attached and you'll have to pick it up and hand stitch it or something. Anyway, just one small note on that. So I'll be back and show you how I do the binding on this.